What would you think if I told you that what terrifies a narcissist most is not the moment you walk away, but the moment you become too strong to be controlled? When a woman begins to stand firmly in herself, when she no longer seeks approval through someone else's eyes, but listens, instead, to the voice within, everything changes, not for her, but for him, he who once manipulated with tenderness, who cloaked hunger for power in sweet words, who made her feel guilty every time she set a boundary, he who said she was too sensitive, too complicated, too selfish for saying no. But now, she no longer needs him to feel worthy. And that shift turns the world upside down. Carl Jung called it the power inversion crisis. When the formerly compliant woman begins to awaken, the narcissist no longer sees a woman he can shape. He sees a threat, a free soul he can no longer command. And so, he strikes back, not with anger or shouting, but with whispers as sharp as needles. You've changed. You used to be so sweet. You're just all about yourself now. But these are not observations. They are weapons, designed to turn your strength into something shameful. Jung once said, when a narcissist loses control of you, they don't retreat. They look for ways to make you doubt your growth. They call independence arrogance. They call boundaries coldness. They call your voice too loud. Not because it is, but because they can no longer silence it. And when this tactic fails, when your gaze remains steady, when you walk without looking back, they reach for something deeper, more dangerous. Jung called it nostalgic manipulation. He begins to resurrect the past, laughing at old jokes, longing for the version of you who was easier to mold. Remember when you used to smile more? You were happier before you read all those self-help books. We were better before you changed. But he doesn't miss you. He misses the version of you who was easier to control. And if you're not careful, you'll begin to miss her too. That is the trap. Not the memories, but the misdirection. Jung warned us. That longing doesn't come from the heart. It comes from the wounded shadow. The part of you still afraid of being left behind. But the truth is, you've outgrown the version of yourself that lived for someone else's comfort. And that's what terrifies him. So when nostalgia doesn't work, he plays his final card. Manufactured vulnerability. Suddenly, he's sick, or broke, or broken-hearted, and it all seems to happen just when you start to stand tall. Right when you stop needing him. He'll say, I have no one else to call. I know you're busy, but I really need you right now. I don't know how I'll survive without you. And your heart aches, because you were always the healer. The safe place, the one who couldn't turn away from pain. And he knows that. He remembers the precise pressure points in your soul. He knows you struggled to say no, especially to someone who once meant so much. But Jung warned, this is not real vulnerability. It is spiritual theater, a story crafted to bypass your boundaries and bring you back into submission. If you cross that line, even once, he'll smile quietly. Not because you helped him, but because he proved he still has power. Jung said, the manipulator doesn't seek love, he seeks control disguised as need. And you won't see it clearly until you realize your compassion has cost you your selfhood. You'll begin to question yourself. Am I too harsh? Am I being cold? Maybe I'm not the person I used to be. And he'll nod, silently. Because that's what he wants. Not your care. Your regression. He wants you to shrink. To fit the space you used to fill. When you didn't yet know your worth. But now, you're standing at the threshold of choice. Not between yes and no. But between false salvation and true freedom. This is the pivot Jung spoke of. The moment the old self, wounded, pleasing, afraid, faces the self being born. Grounded, clear, unapologetically whole. The narcissist doesn't want you to die. He just wants you to forget who you've become. He wants to lull you back into the sleep of self-abandonment. And it won't happen in a scream. It will happen in the smallest of compromises. Just a little help. Just one call. Just a bit of softness. Just this once. But Jung warned, each small, yes, given out of guilt, is a slow erosion of the self. Until, one day, you don't recognize the voice that once dared to say, no. Still, there is a way out. Jung called it differentiated compassion. Feeling deeply, but not surrendering your center. Seeing their pain, without making it your purpose to fix. You don't need to be cruel. But you must be clear. Because kindness without boundaries isn't love. It's self-abandonment. And no one, not even someone who once swore they loved you, has the right to ask you to betray yourself to prove it. The woman who knows her worth does not chase, she chooses. If you believe that peace begins the moment you have the courage to choose yourself, stay, subscribe, to nurture your inner worth and self-love, every day, with greater depth and clarity. You'd be surprised to know that what a narcissist fears most is not abandonment, but the moment their illusion of power crumbles in the presence of your quiet, unwavering strength. Because in that moment, they no longer see someone to dominate. They see someone they can no longer define. A woman who no longer dances for approval becomes terrifying to the one who once orchestrated her every step. It begins silently. She no longer asks if she's enough. No longer rewrites her tone to sound softer. No longer trades her truth for his comfort. The gaze that once sought reassurance now stares inward, clear, still, and sovereign. And that, to a narcissist, is war. Because his identity was built on being needed. And she no longer needs him. What happens next isn't loud. It's surgical. Subtle discrediting of her clarity. Small echoes of doubt dressed as concern. You've become distant. You're not like you used to be. You used to be more gentle. But this isn't nostalgia. It's sabotage cloaked in sentimentality. It's an attempt to reach into her psyche and reawaken the version of her that was easier to shape. The woman who made herself small so someone else could feel big. Carl Jung called this the shadow's resistance. When the unconscious parts of another rise up to attack your awakening. Because when you rise, you shine light on the parts they refuse to see. And not everyone is ready for light. Some would rather drag you back into the cave, so they never had to question their own darkness. That's when the narcissist changes tactics. He moves from doubt to dependency. From critic to victim. He suddenly needs you. Deeply. Urgently. Inconveniently. A health scare. A breakdown. An unexpected collapse. But oddly, it always aligns with your breakthrough. Just as your life begins to stretch open, his begins to fall apart. Coincidence? Carl Jung didn't think so. He spoke of archetypal crisis mirroring, when the disintegration of one self-concept provokes the collapse of another. But in narcissistic dynamics, this collapse is often engineered. Not consciously perhaps, but intuitively. Like a predator sensing its prey slipping away. He orchestrates need to re-establish control. Because a woman who is healing is dangerous. She begins to remember. She remembers that her worth was never meant to be managed. That her softness is not a currency. That her silence is not submission, it's sovereignty. So when the narcissist cannot seduce her back with shame, he will beg her back with brokenness. Please, don't leave now. You're the only one who understands me. I know I've made mistakes. But I'm trying. But the subtext is always the same. Come back to the role where I mattered more than you did. And if she's not grounded in herself, she'll hear this as love, as redemption, as a second chance. But it's not. It's a demand for sacrifice. A plea for her to place his needs back above her own. To trade her wholeness for his sense of worth. Again, this is where many fall. Because empathy is a double-edged sword. Jung warned us, when your compassion lacks boundaries, it becomes a leash, and no matter how softly it's pulled, you are still being led. The narcissist knows this. He doesn't need to raise his voice. He only needs to raise the stakes. He will remind you of your own kindness, and weaponize it. You've always had such a big heart. You're the only one who sees the real me. You'd never abandon someone who's hurting. But this isn't vulnerability. It's leverage. Emotional blackmail dressed as intimacy. Carl Jung called this empathic entrapment, when the manipulator tethers you to them through your desire to be good. But goodness without self-respect is self-destruction. And love that asks you to betray yourself was never love at all. This is not your task. His healing is not your responsibility. His chaos is not your compass. You are not here to be a life raft for someone committed to sinking. You are not required to unlearn your growth just because someone else refuses to rise. Let them drown in their refusal. Let them rage in their ruin. But you are no longer the woman who trades pieces of herself to keep someone else whole. You have crossed the river. You are not standing on the same banks anymore. Your soul has outgrown the cage you once called love. And if he cries from behind the bars, if he begs and pleads, remember, he built those bars. He painted them gold and called them devotion. He placed the lock in your hand and whispered, "This is how you prove you love me." And for a time, you believed him, but not anymore. Now, you know, love is not a cage. And your freedom does not make you cruel. It makes you whole. So when you feel the guilt rising, breathe. It's not guilt. It's grief. Grief for the woman you used to be. The one who made herself smaller, quieter, softer, just to be chosen. But that woman is no longer here. You buried her with honor, with tears, with trembling hands. And from that soil, you rose. Not harder, not colder, but clearer. And clarity is what threatens them most. Because a woman who sees clearly can never be told who she is again. She doesn't negotiate her instincts. She doesn't explain her intuition. She doesn't dilute her fire to comfort someone else's shadows. She chooses herself, not out of ego, but out of reverence. She does not chase approval. She embodies alignment. She doesn't ask to be loved. She becomes the kind of woman love must rise to meet. And that is what ends the cycle. Not confrontation, not closure, but stillness. The stillness of a woman who no longer reacts because she has nothing left to prove. To the narcissist, this is defeat. To her, it is liberation. She knows now, when a person must be rescued to stay. They were never meant to walk beside you. When a person must collapse for your attention. They were never built to hold your trust. You were not made to soothe dysfunction. You were made to bring light. And light has no apology. So if you are standing here now, on the other side of heartbreak, no longer afraid to be alone, no longer willing to be devoured to feel wanted, then stay. Stay in your center. Stay with your truth. Stay with the self you fought to remember. Because the woman who knows her worth doesn't explain her choices. She lives them. She doesn't beg to be seen. She knows she is already luminous. She doesn't return to the fire that burned her just because someone misses the warmth. She walks forward, without guilt, without apology, because she finally understands. The woman who knows her worth does not chase, she chooses. And if you believe that peace begins the moment you choose yourself, stay. Subscribe to nurture your inner clarity, your quiet power, and your sacred self-worth. One day, one truth, one breath at a time.